Hey there, and welcome to Weapon Refine Ideas. In this series I take a look at the newly announced Weapon Refine update, and look at each of the characters to see how they're used at the moment, and what they might get for their weapon refines. We've got 5 characters to look at today, so without further ado, I hope you enjoy the video. Let's get started. To start things off we have Owain. He is a 5-star sword unit from 2018, and it shows really. I mean, he does have a niche which makes him unique, being the Mistletoe Blue Flame combo, but given how most sword units nowadays have weapons that give them 5 tool stats and a plethora of other effects that make them severely overpowered compared to Owain, sadly he faces so much competition nowadays. Now, as far as fodder's concerned, he's still quite well off actually. Blue Flame, I think, is only available on Owain at the moment, and it's a premium special, so it helps you score higher. And Wrath is still a very good skill to put on many different characters, so he's still not a bad pull if you're just looking for some good skills to give to other characters. But if you were going to build him, I'd swap out Wrath for Spurn, because it gives him a form of sustainability. You know, he doesn't have any healing anywhere at the moment, and you can't really afford to get rid of Blue Flame for a healing special when his whole playstyle kind of revolves around that little combo. You could do it, but I think that the speed damage reduction works a little bit better in this case. I also went with Distant Counter and Joint Drive Attack, all things that all these skills synergize with having allies close, and it's quite unique for a sword unit to want allies close. Usually they're a solo beast that goes out and does everything as long as they're solo, but Owain's the sort of character who likes to show off, so it makes sense that he wants to have as many people near him as possible. If he's going to do something cool. He does benefit from the 20 dragon flowers, but the only problem with this sort of thing is that it's very expensive to have to get not only these skills but all these dragon flowers as well. So if I was going to give him a refine, I'd want to keep the base effect because it's his whole kind of gimmick, but then give him a Woe Dao effect on top of this to make it even stronger, and then do a little additional effect where much like the Packed Bloom's tome, he can debuff the opponent if he's near allies and also heal himself a little bit per hit. This saves you the trouble of going out your way to find a damage reducing B skill or anything like swapping out the special. It allows him to stay true to himself while boosting what he's already good at to kind of compete more with the high damaging specials like Regnalastra or the high stats boosting characters that rely on being on their own. I mean, of course, if Owain has allies around them, they're going to have their own effects they can grant to Owain, which solo characters can't quite take as much advantage of. But yeah, this is what I do for Owain. Hopefully he gets something cool. It's quite hard to come up with something for a sword that hasn't already been done, or at least done to death. So hopefully they'll keep his niche in mind and make him stronger based on that. Next up we have Bridal Tharja. She is the seasonal unit of this bunch. Now I was expecting her to be last month, but alas they did other characters instead, and it made sense because there are quite a few. But Bridal Tharja is a rather standard red mage with good offences and not very good defences. The one advantage she has is that she is min-maxed in attack and speed. She doesn't have a low def and high res and then a middling attack and speed. She has good attack, good speed, and then low def and res. This can be used to your advantage with her weapon, where she further boosts her attack and speed, and oddly her stat spread has kind of aged well over the time. She doesn't have much in the way of fodder, but if you were to build her, I would actually go with the dual infantry Fox Tome rather than an impact skill, because none of her defensive stats or anything stand out. So if you were just to average out the def and res, I think it might be a bit better, because it also allows you to boost her attack and speed a little bit more, and thus compete with modern threats. You won't even need all of these dragon flowers, but I wanted to show you what she's like at max potential, just so you see that even though she's a couple of years old now, she's still a unit that can pull her weight, and with the dual infantry skill will score relatively high. The lull skill allows her to do more damage, you know, so on and so forth. The build's just a typical Fox Tome build. If I was to refine her though, I would update the base effect to be a little bit stronger, because you see what they did with Halloween Noe was take the aerobatics thing to the next level where she can teleport within 2 spaces of an ally, and I think what they're trying to do is give these seasonal units something that no other character can do, or at least give them something that's really gimmicky and unique that makes them a bit more worth your orbs. I mean, these characters cost the same as the newest seasonal characters because the banner rates are the same. It's the same old revival banner every year. Why would you spend 2,000 orbs on Bridal Tharja when you could spend 2,000 orbs on that new harvest banner coming out this week, you know? So I wanted to give us something useful. So the base effect is updated so it has no cap, and it's 3 times the number of allies plus 1. So for every ally, it's plus 4 attack and speed with no cap. This sounds broken, but remember, she's got terrible defense and res, and without the secondary refine, it really is just a stronger hit with a bit more speed. It's making up for the fact you have to invest in dragon flowers. And then if you look at the refine effect, I basically gave her Firesweep as long as you've got at least 3 allies within the 3 rows and columns that I've updated the effect to be in range of. And the point of this is just to have a more easy condition to activate, and then the Firesweep mitigates the use of having all this def and res of a problem, you know? So you can just boost your attack and speed to your heart's content. Very fun on rival domains maps. Yet she's not going to be broken because the second she's on enemy phase she dies in 1 hit, you know? So hopefully she gets something interesting like this. Laevatein is another 3-year-old sword infantry character, and she again shows her age in her fodder and her stats, but much like Owain, her weapon does give her a unique approach to sword fighting. While Owain had a special boosting type of weapon, Laevatein has a blade tome in a weapon where all her buffs are transferred into her damage as well, which is really cool. I mean, she was really fun when she came out. People used to do these little YouTube competitions where they would try and stack up as much damage as they could with this character because she was just that fun. She has a 19 might weapon, in other words it has 16 with attack plus 3, and that brings her immediately to 59 if you use Fury. That's huge, even by today's standard. That's a lot of attack points, without any merges or IVs. So when it came to building her, I of course wanted to protect her stat boosts with the Unity skill. This allows her to use her Menace skill effectively because even if the opponent panics you, you're not going to have any problems with your buffs at all. You might lose the fact that they are in combat buffs, as in visible buffs, but you will gain the advantage of transferring the debuff or reverse buff into something positive. Null follow-up works with her extremely high attack stat and middling speed, so that even if a character has wary fighter effects like Fallen Edelgard, you should be able to shred through them. She has decent defense, so she should be able to duel with Fallen Edelgard have you got null follow-up, although having fully buffed stats might actually be enough to one-shot her, though she has so much defense I wouldn't rely on that. And then Mystic Boost is a form of sustain. I thought the special would be a better place to increase your attack because she has such a high damage output that something like Glimmer would be really fun to play around with. But yeah, that's about it really. It's just high damage and then protect your attack and speed buffs just to make sure that you're always the one with the advantage. So as for her base effects, I updated it in a similar way to how they update some of the other FEH OC characters, where they keep the base effect simple and then add on something like attack def -4 if the opponent's high on HP. Just a simple extra effect. It's like having lull attack def where you'll reduce their damage and their bulk so that you do more damage. As for refine, it looks like a lot, but it's literally just Spectrum Unity. Now although that's really powerful, they could just go with attack speed Unity if they want, but I thought that since Gunther has something that can deal -7 to all stats on someone, and then a further -7 attack res I think, on nearby enemies of that enemy, then why can't Laevatein have a Spectrum Unity skill to protect all her stat buffs and make sure that her weapon's always useful, and if the buffs aren't there then she's getting significant boosts to her all her stats. So yeah, hopefully she'll get a good refine in this next update. Next up we have Julius, the heroic grail unit of Dispatch. Now his weapon is quite interesting because it gives him a vulnerability to dragon effective weapons, and then if the opponent is not dragon effective, then it debuffs them. So it's quite unique and it works well with close counter. The problem is that, especially with his very dated stat line, it's very hard to make use of this in a way that doesn't harm you more than it helps you. I mean, there's so many dragon effective units nowadays that it's quite hard to want to give yourself that penalty when there are other kind of slow, high res red mages that have preference weapons that don't give you that, like Arvis. So how would you build Julius in his current state? Well, I gave him no follow-up to help him with the slower foes, because of course he doesn't have a huge speed stat to double all the speedy boys. But at the same time, he does have a super boon in speed, I'm pretty sure, and with all the investment, bells and whistles, he can run a semi-speed build. So using Loptus, Close Reversal, and the solo skill, you can give yourself 18 extra defense points, which brings you right up to where your res is at, effectively. But of course Loptus also boosts your res, because you're debuffing the opponent's attack points, so you will never match them, but you certainly bring it up quite high. Iceberg will deal a good chunk of damage, which helps if you're battling tanky foes, and the attack res menace helps with all sorts of things, because it's basically just a better attack ploy. It can help your allies, and it can help your damage, and it can help your bulk. It's just a win-win-win all around. And in order to make him a little bit more unique with his refine, I updated the base effect to do attack and res -6 on the foe, as this will help your damage, and then I gave him a Bridal-like effect with his weapon, where he can make a guaranteed follow-up attack and the foe can't, under a certain condition. In Rid's case it's having a penalty active on foe, whereas with Julius it is, well, if the opponent has or doesn't have an effective against Dragon's weapon. For the refine I gave him flow refresh, so it means that if he's initiating he'll absolutely be able to make both of his attacks, and then he'll heal 10 HP afterwards, which helps when his defense stat isn't ideal. But yeah, that's it really for Julius. I hope that they give him something like this, because as one of those red mages that has that very standard high attack and res stat line as a grand hero battle, he needs something like this in order to differentiate himself, because it's become a little bit like the sword infantry pool, where you've got so much competition that unless you have a Gen 6 stat line or a really good weapon refine, no one's going to use you. It's just the sad truth. Unless of course you like Julius. But if you do, I hope for your sake that he gets a really nice refine so you can enjoy using him more. Last but not least we have Soleil. Now Soleil surprisingly stood the test of time really well for a 2018 unit, because especially for a demote you expect them to not be too good, especially when they don't come with a preference weapon, they have brazen attack speed, stuff like this. But Soleil, she has a surprisingly good stat line, and you can build her in almost any way that you want. And the fact that she comes with a Firesweep sword is just the cherry on top to all that. Now in terms of her fodder, she has Blazing Wind, which is probably the best AoE special, just going by what everyone seems to be using and my own experience. And then Firesweep sword is also a really fun, cool weapon that's actually pretty good, but it doesn't have any refine, so you can't boost your stats with it. Now when it comes to what people do with her, a lot of people like to run Null Sea Disrupt, because while Firesweep sword stops you counter-attacking, Null Sea also affects your own skills. So if someone attacks you and you're using Firesweep, Null Sea allows you to hit back, which doesn't sound amazing, but when you've got a one-way Firesweep with no balancing, that's kind of cool. And it also means you can counter healers, so distant counters are a really good one on her build there. I also gave her Attack Death Menace, because it means that when an opponent is in range you can debuff them, and then that will of course help you kill them, and it will help your bulk as well if you're going to stand there and take a hit from someone else. This is useful because with Heavy Blade, after hitting someone twice, your ether cooldown will be at 1, and then when the next foe comes in, whether it's a healer or anyone like that, you'll have an instant proc ether ready to go. So it all works together quite nicely. Yeah, and then for her refine, I kept the Firesweep of course It's something that makes her unique compared to everyone else. Like I said with Owain and Laevatein, you've got to be really unique if you're a sword unit, if you want people to actually invest in you at all. But a 16 might Firesweep sword is quite nice, and to refine it I gave it Null Sea Disrupt and a HP conditioned heavy blade. Both of these effects are HP conditioned, but with a Firesweep sword that's very easy. I mean, you could almost keep it at, if unit's HP is 100%, and it would pretty much always be active. But I wanted to give a Null Sea so you don't have to waste the B slot for that gimmick. It's all confined into the weapon, and the extra special cooldown charge just means you don't have to rely on your Sacred Seal or your A skill to have Heavy Blade or something. You get the extra cooldown regardless, so long as you're high on HP. So all this can work with the previous build I showed, and also well, it would just make her unique and versatile once again, sticking with what Soleil's good at, and that's, well, everything. She's not the master of anything by all means, but she's still pretty good at everything, and for a free-to-play unit, this is a very generous refine. I do hope she gets something cool. Having a quick look at the state of refines, all the units from this batch were red, so there's a huge chunk now taken out of the red units, leaving it a little bit more balanced overall actually. And it also has left just dancers and legendary heroes for swords, which surprised me. They've got through all the other sword units from book 2, and then mostly heroic grail units for the other reds. That being said, in terms of predictions, heroic grail units are going in order of release as of late, so we can expect Karnas next, then Warheart, so on. If you want to calculate this for yourself, then you can go to the heroic grail shop and skip over all the seasonals, dancers and healers, and that should be the order of which the heroic grail refine should come out. As for the rest though, I think they do 2 legendary heroes at a time every other month, but apart from that there aren't any other patterns I can see, apart from having a 3 and 4 star of course every month, and a heroic grail unit. So tell me below who you think might get refined next, and who you might be excited for. As for the seasonals, a whole 1 unit has been taken away from this bunch, leaving just Summer Tana and Summer Tiki as the pref weapon users that aren't dancers. One thing I noticed when I added the pink marker was that 1/6 of these units are dancers, which explains why their intelligence systems have shied away from giving these characters refines. But tell me below what you think might happen with this bunch, because they really are the oddballs of FEH, the seasonal units of old, because there's so many of them, and a lot of them have very standard stat lines that aren't very standout, and without preference weapons they got nothing to show for it, so it would be really interesting to see if they get refined soon. But yeah, tell me what you think. That brings me to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching today. I do hope you learned a few things about these characters and found the video interesting. Please tell me below who you think might be getting refined next, and if there's anyone you're particularly excited for. I for one, I merged Warheart and Garen and I'd really like to see them get refined soon, but thankfully I know when they might be getting their refines. But if there's anyone, whether the heroic grail or not, that you merged over the course of your FEH lifetime, feel free to tell me in the comments about what build you're using on them, and what you're hoping they might get for their refine when they get it. But yeah, thank you all for watching once again, and I hope you stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.